So let's talk about how to view your forms, collect responses, and then view those responses. Google Forms is really great for you being able to see your form as the user will see it by previewing it without actually submitting a response. In each form at the top right, there's an option for you to preview your form, and then it will open it up in a new tab so you can see it like a user does. As long as you don't hit the submit button, you won't have any responses in your form. So you can go through everything even if you have required questions and see what it's going to look like. This is a great way to also test your branching if you have questions leading to other sections based off of their answer. And then if you exit the preview, you can either exit the tab and go back to your form that you had before, or you can hit the edit button in the top right. These are just great options for you to look at that form. So I'm going to go back to my practice form that we created together and show you where that is. You can see I'm currently looking at my form, and up here in the top right, there's a little eye icon for me to be able to preview it. I can click that button and you'll see at the top of my browser a new tab appears. So my form editing option is still available over here, and it's going to load my form as the user would see it. And this is, again, just a great way for you to test it out, and I highly suggest you do this every time you create a form. So here you can see it says the title, what's your first and last name. I can put Leah Silvius, and then I have next because I have a section that moves me to the next page. And that will ask me my final question because I only have 2 questions in this form. And you'll see that I can't submit this until I click the required answer, one of the options. And as long as you don't submit this, you won't have any forms for your responses. So that's how you can do that. Now, what I would say, since we're practicing, is I would submit one. So I would go through your form right now and I would submit an option through the preview, so that way you can actually have a response inside of your responses. And if you wanted to, you could actually do just a couple people real quick so you can see the different options. So if you want to pause the video right here, I highly suggest you go do that just so we can see the responses. So once you have responses, the question is, what do you do? The other thing is, how do you collect responses without the preview? So let's talk about collecting responses real quick. When you have a form and you want to share it out to people, there's a difference between sharing and collecting responses. Sharing is where you want to share it like with a colleague so that they can make edits, versus collecting responses where you want users to be seeing your form, filling it out, and submitting those answers. So inside the sharing, you have that option to edit the form. You can view the responses in the form view and change the settings on the form. So you want to be careful about who you send that link to. And then you have collecting responses, which you have a specific link you need to send out to people in order to collect them. So when we're in a form, you have a couple options. You have sending a form, and then you have this URL at the top. I would highly suggest you never share this URL up at the top. This URL is a personalized URL for you, and you should definitely be using the features of Google Forms to share a form with a collaborator or send it so that you can collect responses. So don't utilize this URL up at the top. Instead, use these options over here on the right. So you have sending, which is where you want to collect responses, and then the triple dot gives you options to share and add collaborators to this form so that they can view, edit, and do all those kinds of things. So this is just like sharing like a Google Doc or a folder with somebody. When you add collaborators, they get the option to do whatever they want with the form, and you can make those changes inside of the sharing. So you'll see here, once it loads, that I can choose anybody inside of my domain. I can type their names. You can see that anyone can open with a link if I have a link and I want to just use the link. But if I want to really add a collaborator, they're probably going to be an editor anyway. So I can type anybody in our domain and use that. Clicking outside of that, off to the right or left, I then have the option to send my form. And when you send your form, this is where you are collecting responses. You can email out to like your parents or those kinds of things. You can see again that you can add collaborators right here if you didn't get to it through the triple dot. You've also got the option right here with a link where you can shorten this URL, copy this URL, and send it out to other people. And then you have the option to embed it inside of a page if you have like a web page or something like that. The link is the most common option, where you just send a link out and you're collecting those responses. Highly suggest that you shorten this URL. They look a lot better personally. And then you can hit copy right here to copy it. That then puts it in your clipboard. And if I open up a new tab in my browser, you'll see that I can go to the form and fill it out just like I was a user. So this is that link that you want to send out to people to collect those responses. So again, if you don't have any responses on your form, I highly suggest you take a moment, add about 2 or 3, pause the video here, and be able to edit those options to see the collected responses. All right, so now that we've got form responses, we're going to want to go ahead and view those. Right up here at the top, you've got responses that you can view, and you can see I have 5 responses to my form because I just add them all. But you can see how many you have. So anytime you want to view your form responses, you will need to open your form back up. So you'll need to be in Google Drive, open that form back up in editing view, and then choose responses up at the top. It's really important you do this because a lot of people think that they can go to Google Classroom and view their responses for a quiz, but really you need to go into the form physically and then click responses. In responses, we have a couple options. You first can see the overview of your responses for your class and your form. You can view it by question. So if you want to view it one-on-one by question and look at what people did and how many people responded, and then you can cycle through the questions right here. You can also look at people's individual answers. So you can go individually, like this is my answer, here's the whole form, and I can see everything that happened along with the time and date right here. The summary tab is really great to view overarching graphs, and it will generate these automatically and update in real time. So as people are answering, you can actually watch these graphs change. It's really cool, actually. And you have these options. You can copy and paste these outside of here. So if you want to put them inside of something for your PLC or for you to keep for later, you can do that as well. And that's how you can view your responses in this summary view. You can also generate a spreadsheet. So right here, there's an option to do a Google Sheets, and that will ask you if you would like to generate a spreadsheet, and you can create a new name if you want to. And usually it does the name of the form and then responses, and you can do whatever you want, but I usually keep it at the default and then hit create. That will generate a spreadsheet, which will open up in a new tab on your screen. And then you can see each person individually as their own row inside of the sheet, where you can then start manipulating these, highlighting things you want to point out, creating functions to be able to generate answers, all those kinds of things. So you can really evaluate your data. Then what you also have is how do you access these things once they're done, right? So again, like I said, the timestamp is right here. There's your first and last name, but you'll see in your Google Drive that now there is a spreadsheet sitting right next to your form that you can then access at any time. I highly suggest creating a spreadsheet, especially if you look at things through a mobile device on a regular basis, because you can't actually view the form responses in the form view via your mobile device. You have to use a computer for that, but you can view the spreadsheet. So I highly suggest that. And this spreadsheet will auto-populate as answers are added in more and more. So that's how you can view your form, send your form to collaborators as well as people to collect responses, and then how can you view your results of your form.